This is the inbound secret.
My name is Bryce, and I'm your host for The Inbound Secret, where we're talking with top performers and health experts and sales badasses alike about their strategies to optimize their well-being and performance. Once again, this is The Inbound Secret, and let's get rocking and rolling.
This is the inbound. This is the inbound. This is the inbound. The inbound. This is the inbound secret.
Welcome back to The Inbound Secret. This is your host, Bryce Vance, with the Virtually Limitless team, and I've got a special guest for you today. We have got Steve Werner here. Now, some of you may know who he is, some of you may not, but to just catch up to speed, you've held, 63, 64 sold-out events for you and your clients.
We're actually up to 75.
Up to 75.
Now, 3 weeks ago.
Now, that's not including your virtual events, because you've done a couple hundred of those, right?
These are all in person. So
you're several hundred events out in your career at this point. Now, I'm going to hand it over to you to do a quick intro, but we're going to explore one topic right after that, because this makes that even more impressive. A lot of people can't figure out how to structure their time well enough to do one event a year, let alone 300, including virtual events over a career. And you do this while traveling, because you've done 3+ remote years, traveling from Airbnb to Airbnb to Airbnb, still operating at high service. So without further ado, Steve, introduce yourself, and then let's dive right on in on how you're making that happen.
Cool. Thank you so much. I mean, you hit it. I mean, I've done a ton of events. I love public speaking. I love being on stage and selling from stage. When I got started, I went to a Tony Robbins event. I think a lot of people were inspired by Tony Robbins. At the time I worked in restaurants. I was like, that's going to be me. Saved up a bunch of money. I moved to Las Vegas. I scrimped and saved $30K, moved to Las Vegas, rented an event space, the largest event space I could find, and proceeded to sell 2 registrations, burned through all my cash. Ended up living in a utility room at my friend's house, but the brain started going. I recovered from that and held my first live event with 80 people at an off-strip casino, funded on a credit card. Didn't make a ton of money, made about $9K, but that was 2014, and I just hit the ground running. I said, this is what I'm going to do, and blood, sweat, and tears over the next several years. Now, 70, I think it's either 75 or 76 live events that I have held for myself or clients. And then I've spoke on a couple hundred stages in person, as then add virtual stuff. And it's crazy amount, but that's it.
So one of the things that really brings everybody together here on the Inbound Secret, and really kind of the mission of it, is to remove the veil from what seems like the impossible, right? Now, being people that have fallen on their faces thousands of times, yourself, myself, I can't tell you how many times I've failed. We've picked up little lessons from that. And more often than not, there's lessons teach us the smoke and mirrors behind any of these large gurus that you see. I specialize in the tech side of that. You specialize in the personification of the event side of that and the sales aspect to that. Tell us a little bit about how that discovery went from you, because I've been to a Tony Robbins event just virtually. I've never been to a live one with him. And even the virtual events that he does, you're just like, Jesus Christ, what happened here?
That's what started it. And I would highly recommend once he starts doing them in person, get in contact with me. I will. I have a concierge there. I sponsor 5 people a year to go to his events because awesome. I feel like they're so powerful. I would love to make that happen. So I started. I just was like, I want to be on stage. I know that I like speaking in front of people. But what happened after I fell on my face is I learned like the real money isn't made through ticket sales. Ticket sales is a break even or loss leader to sell something at the back of the room. That's, you can be a keynote speaker. There are two sides to public speaking. There's keynote speaker side and there's speak and sell something from stage. And I think a lot of people are like, I want to be the motivational speaker like Tony Robbins. Well, Tony Robbins makes money on ticket sales, but he makes 3 times that selling at the back of the room. And a lot of people don't see that up front. I do both. To be completely clear, I do about 80% speak and sell from stage. That is mostly what I prefer, but I do get contacted now through LinkedIn to do business trainings where I'll go into a place for half a day and train. The main thing that I teach people is how to use your story to build an exciting presentation. And that is what gets people to lean forward and say, I want to buy something, not it comes with this feature and benefit. It's going to do this, and like naming off all the junk. Sure, people want a little bit of that, but more they get inspired by your story. And that's what gets people emotional. And emotion is what causes people to buy. I don't know if that was the answer to your question, but I'm happy to talk about basically live events when I started, whatever questions, whatever I can help you with.
So I think everybody's going to get a ton of gold nuggets out of this. So we'll use me as an example. I'm always happy to be the guinea pig, right? So I've done a few live events over the years. Nothing huge. It's something that I'm getting more and more into. I've kind of had this weird transformation, right? In 2017, when I opened this company, I was about 6 or 7 years in on the marketing and tech side. Mm-hmm. Doing it for other people, doing it for a prior business, just playing around, getting involved in it. And that started Funnel Driven. And then Funnel Driven started kind of expanding into this weird area where in 2019, somewhere around 2019, we kind of stumbled into also opening Chimera Developments, which is our app development company. And that was accidental. We built a thing for us, and then people started asking if we could build their stuff. And we were like, well, I mean, yeah, sure. I'm not going to say no. So,
right.
So that turned into, now we've got an app company. And then that's kind of evolved into this like really impactful thing that I've been blessed to become a part of. Because now we've got the Inbound Secret that I'm launching, which started as just this podcast, and has now turned into our coaching and education and like mindset company. Like that's where that is. And then we even went as far as going through our repertoire of old proposals, old clients, old leads. Who have we impacted? Who couldn't we impact? And found a big hole. And we were like, well, there's this margin of people that need our help that can't afford us. How do we help them? So we started Social Media Chimera Marketing, which is our low ticket version of Funnel Driven. Rather than custom development work, it uses templates based off of the custom work, the Funnel Driven stuff. So now we're starting to launch that. I think it just came out like 2 months ago. So it's fresh and hot off the press. And then all of this came into play to Virtually Limitless. Me, Trey Carmichael, Liz Mahoney, Justine Mader. We've started, really, it's just our passion project, but it's been our focus point. It's knowledge isn't power until it's applied. And we're going to give you everything to really unlock who you already are. You're already limitless. You're born that way. How do we remove the veil of wall after wall after wall that you've built up through social programming, complacency, failures to bring you back to who you truly are? And during all of this, I played around with a couple live events. Now, my timing wasn't as good as yours. You had impeccable timing as far as 2014 coming in and then kind of growing with the evolution of media. I started doing my in-person events 2018. So I had like a year, and then the world imploded. So
right.
Tell me a little bit about, because there were 2 challenges that we faced when we were doing the live event side. One was getting the people who confirmed and verified to actually show. Yep. We had a huge verification pool, and like 1/10 of them actually showed up. right? And then two, we struggled with this one a little bit, and we've been getting better at it every time we present, especially if we're doing it virtually. But I think a lot of people have this same barrier. We know we have to sell to be in best service. We're comfortable with selling. We don't have a problem with that. But what we don't want to do is turn something that is as powerful as the stage, as powerful of an impact on these people's lives, into an infomercial.
Right.
Creating that happy medium was a challenge for us. And I believe it is for so many people listening to this. Tell us a little bit about how you got to that happy space where you're not just Billy Mays slinging ShamWows, like you're actually making an impact here. And then you can sell something if you want to make a larger impact.
So, okay, there's a lot to unpack in your questions. The first one that I want to ask you directly, were you charging for your event, or was your event free or included with a back end of something like you buy our package, you get a free ticket?
So we've done all three. The
Mhm.
highest show up rate was when we charged for the event.
Yeah, 100%. So, okay, I'll give you the best practice for all of those. One, the best show up rate you're ever going to get is when somebody buys a ticket. It needs to be at least $97. If they're flying in from somewhere, it needs to be, I would tell you $497. If I'm building an event for a client, I won't do it unless they're at least charging $497 for the ticket, because show ups will fall off. People get close to the date. They haven't bought an airline ticket. What they look at literally is, I haven't booked my ticket. I'm 2 weeks out. And when they originally bought your ticket for $97, the flight's worth $300 round trip. Now they're $800. And just for cost savings, they're like, screw it. They come up with all the reasons not to do it. They don't come. You have to charge enough that their pain of disconnect is, I'm going to show up. The other things that you can do beforehand, this works for all three of these incoming people, is do pre-calls. Get them on the call, give them a reason to show up to the call beforehand. You're going to build a little bit of community. You're going to build rapport. They will be much more likely to show up. Do at least 2 pre-calls. I always just did them on Zoom. I would get people there. I would give a giveaway to get them there. We're going to give you a VIP dinner at the event. We're going to do something that they're like, oh, holy crap, I've got to show up for this. Maybe I'd have one of the keynote speakers come in 15 minutes on the call just to say, hey, but something to get them on the call, because then they're invested. I don't mind if you sell a package, if you sell a course, if you sell something and you want to give the ticket away to the event for free, that's fine. But you have to charge usually like a $197 seat deposit or materials deposit. And you can tell them, we're going to refund this when you show up in person. Your show up rates are still going to be less than if you charged $497, but I would say you're going to probably have a 20 to 25% drop off using that method. If you follow Peng Joon, that's what Peng Joon does. Russell has done that a few times. There, like, a lot of people do that kind of setup, and that works pretty well because it's somebody who bought something from you usually for $500 to $1,000, maybe $2,000, and they're getting the ticket as a support. I'll come back to that. The last method is the least profitable, and that is giving a free ticket, because people just aren't going to show. The only place that I recommend doing a free ticket, and I think everybody listening to this should do this, if you want to start an event, do a meetup. You can do a meetup. It is free or very low cost in your town. Even if you just have 5 people show up, those 5 people cared enough to drive across town and spend a Tuesday night with you, chances are they are a client. Like, I'll get into like how living in Airbnbs and what I do when I'm on the road. But one of the ways I build my own client database is going to other people's meetups and holding my own meetup. So before I lived in Phoenix, I was in Orlando. That was before the lockdown. When I was there for 3 months. We set up, I went to several meetups. I went to meetups, got active in that community, handed out a lot of business cards, a lot of books, got to know people, and I built my own meetup. I had almost 30 people show up to my own meetup, and out of that did over 10K. So like, you can totally set that up.
So here's an interesting side note before you get on to the rest of the information. On a meetup, are you running a meetup the same way you would run a stage, or are you running a meetup as like a impromptu mixer with the keynotes?
Exactly. Networking plus, so you always want networking, right? Networking plus you want to provide, like, ask yourself the people, what is 2 steps before what you sell people? What do they need 2 steps before? And don't just go straight into things. So if it's funnels, I mean, if you follow like cold, warm, hot traffic, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
We're turning it. So if you're selling funnels, if you're an advertising agency, what might they need? Copy comes to mind right away. Everybody struggles with copy. Hey, we're going to do
content, creative. Yeah.
any of that. We're going to do a small meetup. We're going to network. I'm going to provide you with 1 free cocktail and a hot dog, some kind of food. Like, you can do this for $300 or $400. You don't need that stuff, but it will get people to show up. We're going to do a mixer, and I'm going to do a small workshop where we're going to build out 3 emails for you. You're going to leave with 3 done for you emails. And this is like, you ask how you sell from stage without selling. At that meetup, if you solve their problem, those people are going to think that you, like, you're a diamond. Like, they're going to be like, oh my goodness. And you should be. I mean, you don't sell junk, but you will, out of 10, 15 people in the room, 3 of them are going to like talk your ear off. And all you do is, hey, do you want to get coffee this week? And then you take them to a coffee meeting and you close them into any service that you offer. That works extremely well, and nobody does it because, like, I laugh at funnels. I love Russell. I love ClickFunnels. Funnels are brilliant in the way that they work, but they are not a one-size-fits-all solve for every problem in the world.
I'm so glad you said that. So,
but that's what everyone thinks. They're like, I don't want to sell anything. I'm going to build a funnel.
Here's the thing that blows my mind about this. Okay. First off, a sales funnel is not a landing page. Okay. A landing page, even a sequence of landing pages, is still only part of your sales funnel, right? You're talking about, you need traffic, you need indoctrination, you need content, you need creative, you need a media source, you need placements, you need the landing page, you need opt-in, you need follow-up, you need sales, you need retention, you need HR, you need management. That's a sales funnel. That everything we just went over. And that's why when we started talking a little bit and I was talking to your associate, even though our company name is funnel driven, right? Because that's really kind of what we're driving. We don't build sales funnels. We build the omnipresent ecosystems.
There you go.
Because people get that.
Yeah. That's what you really need. I mean, you can, I mean, God love Russell. Russell is great. I consider him a friend.
He's a master of his craft.
But what he sells is funnels, and he is great at selling them. So people buy them and they're like, I have a home-based business MLM and I've got a sales funnel. And they're like, it took them months to get the sales funnel together, but they don't have traffic, they don't have content, they don't have any credibility. So they're like, I spent $2 to 10 grand getting this funnel built and nothing's happening. Or now I've got $10 a day to run in Facebook ads. Well, 2 thumbs up. I mean, in my opinion, nothing beats having a great sales presentation that you give from stage. And when I say that, that means helping people solve their problem by teaching them. We'll circle back, because this is how you sell without selling. You teach them, but you don't take them. This is the mistake that everyone makes. Your audience, virtual, live, your audience, whoever they are, if they're following you, it's because they think you can solve their problem. Number one, and you're entertaining. You have to be entertaining. If you just solve problems, you would be a computer nerd behind a desk. You have to be entertaining, solve problems. But when people are following you, and everybody word vomits, because we feel like our ego says the way I can provide the most value is to give them everything that I know in 2 minutes. Well, what happens? I want you to think about this. Like, go back to high school. Think of your least favorite teacher.
So I'm really glad you brought up this thought experiment, and I'm going to kind of throw in one of my biggest challenges of recent. So I just got my first
go for it.
Self-published book out roughly a month, 2 months ago, called How Prolific Mistakes Make Prolific Profits. And it's my story, my failures, my figuring out who I was, my lowest point, kind of where I am, where I'm going, right? And it's using me as an analogy for the reader to be able to do the thing, right?
Right.
And my biggest struggle with that, it's 21 chapters, it's about 185, 195 pages. That was a struggle, because I think back to my least favorite teachers who were just analytical and to the point, but at the same time that I hated learning from them because there was no entertainment factor, it was quick, concise. I got the information, I was in and out, right? So when I was writing the book, I found myself falling in that trap. I'm like, I can tell my whole fucking story in 10 pages. Why do I need 21 chapters for this? But then I read it and I'm like, oh, this is garbage. This I need to fix this.
Well, I mean, when you try where I'm going with this, your least favorite teacher in high school probably taught and taught and taught and taught and taught.
Mhm.
And what happens as our brain consumes information, it works like a computer. It starts to shut down and we start to close off. Then we pick up our phone and we're on Facebook or reading something, or we just leave. I mean, that's what I did in high school.
Yeah.
So like, you think about, how do we like to consume information? We want to learn in small, bite-sized chunks. Think of like breadcrumbs, right? And our goal when we're talking to a prospective client, our audience, an email even, we'll come back to email in a second, but when we do this, the goal isn't to take them from a 1 or a 2 to a 10. The goal is to take them from a 1 or a 2 to a 3. And get them to be like, oh man, because they are going to think about that one single thing that you taught them that gets them turned on and excited. They're going to think about that for the next week or two. And they are going to then be ready to go to the next level with you. What everybody does though, is they dump all their crap on them. They're like, bleh. And people are like, and then they're like, what happens when you associate pain with something? You ignore it, even if you know you need it. Taxes are a great example, right? It's tax time right now. Like everyone's like, "Ooh, I need to do the yard needs mowed. Yeah. I'm going to go do anything but that." Right? Same thing if you're over teaching. So when you're on stage, if you're thinking about this, if you're going to speak on stage, virtual events are a great place to practice this. If you look, the reason that most people's virtual talks are not attended is because they're teaching their entire system in a 20-minute talk. Teach one thing that is 2 levels out from what you sell, or 1 level out from what you sell. 1 main point, 3 stories that emphasize that point and get people to be like, oh my goodness, that makes sense. I could do that. Because that's the main thing. Future pacing people to say, I could do that. If you're speaking somewhere you can't sell, cool. Drive them. We talked about take them for a coffee. Like, go do something with them. If you can sell from stage, it becomes very easy. And this is where Russell, Tony Robbins, all of them are geniuses. They get you to future pace yourself into the success that they have. They don't sell how you get there. They don't sell it's 21 coaching sessions over the next year. You're going to meet for 18 hours. You're going to do a 900-page workbook. They sell, you're going here. You want a better mindset. You want to get out of your own way. You want to double your income. We're taking you there. They've showed you just enough to get you to move forward in your head. And you're like, I'm in. If you look at all their stage presentations, that's what they're built to do. So that's like a very rough draft. Go ahead.
So one thing that I've noticed, and this kind of parallels, we've done a abnormal amount of webinars for us and our clients, primarily our clients. We build them out with pretty much every ecosystem that's gold or higher, right?
Yep.
And it's almost an exact parallel, because even though there's not necessarily a virtual event, most webinars are created to be evergreen. So that way it's semi-passive, at least to the end user. The process is really just teaching without teaching, and then taking that little element, because you're right, especially in webinars. One of my favorite ones was actually Marshall Silver. And there's 2 reasons why it was one of my favorite ones. It's the one he did in 2019. And it was his turning point one, the most recent one he did. I had to pick that thing apart for like 6 months because a client was like, I want this, make it. And I'm like, all right. And I had just gotten back from his first live event in Vegas, and I was going to Turning Point a few months after I was finished dissecting his webinar. And the one thing that I noticed particularly in his, and he does a really good job about this, is there's 3 key elements that he always does in every stage performance or webinar, whether you think about it or not. He has great micro commitments. He uses both auditory and visual neurolinguistic programming.
Yep.
And he pre-frames and pre-sells his pre-sale from the get-go, which most people don't. And a really good example of this is almost all of his Turning Point webinars starts with, I want you to take a fresh mind, a fresh piece of paper, or anything you can take notes on, and I want you to write 3 words on there. Take action now. That's it. And then you're going to stare at that fucking thing for an hour and a half to 2 hours while he's talking and pitching you and getting you framed to buy. And then when it comes to a buying decision, well, you already fucking committed at the beginning. So
Yeah, it's very easy. It's exactly. Marshall's great. He was one of the very first things that I ever went to. I went to see him. I saw him speak in 1999.
Okay.
That'll tell you.
Right when he started getting branded as the millionaire maker.
Man, I don't even know what he was doing. We went to something called the Learning Annex, which is now defunct, but it was like a group thing. They would put he bought stage time there. I understand how all this works now, but they had like 30 people. It was a 2-day event. Rich Dad Poor Dad was just catching fire. Robert Kiyosaki was the headliner. Donald Trump was there. Those were the 2 headliners, but Marshall had like a breakout room somewhere, and I saw him speak, and he was like one of the 3 people that I wrote down. So I went to see, he had like a 2-day event that he sold, and then from the 2-day to the 7-day. Yeah. And I bought the 2-day ticket. I did not buy the next one, but it always stuck in my mind. Well, then in 2014, I actually went back and found some of his stuff and started following. He's a genius, but you touched on it exactly. Like, you do want to teach. You want to give people. The thing is, we don't see it as teaching because it's what we take for granted. It's like our second nature, right?
Well, and I'm going to pause you for a second on that, because I love that key point. And too often I skip over this, or I see other people skip over this, and I don't want us to have that same mistake.
Yeah.
It's probably the best lesson that anybody listening or watching this, remember this, write this down. What you just said, Steve, it's what we take for granted. I can talk funnels until my fucking head falls off. I can talk traffic, omnipresence, marketing, digital assets, tech, development. I can talk that because I understand it. Mm-hmm. But most people, most of my audience, their eyes glaze over in 5 seconds because I take that for granted. And that's the little nugget there that I want everybody to write down. Just because it's easy for you does not mean it's easy for everybody else.
It's so hard for everybody else. And I had this lesson brought home several times. Like, I would speak on stage for the first, to be 100% transparent, I did this year. Somebody came up to me after talking, was like, you lost me at I called a PowerPoint presentation a deck. And they were like, what is a deck? Yeah. And they were like, you lost me. And I spent half the presentation trying to figure out what you were talking about. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, you've never heard of a pitch deck. Like, I was like, I like, it took me like a good 20 seconds to be like, don't tell him he's dumb. Because you don't. I mean, we were all there.
You don't mean to.
No, but you're just like, how are you in this game? Like, okay. But then I'm like, let's just take it back a second. And then I explained it to him. He actually ended up turning into a customer, but it was only because he came and talked to me, because I lost him in the presentation. So when I tell you go 2 steps back from what you sell, like for funnels, right? Just what did you say earlier? There's a difference between a sales funnel and a landing page. Like,
and as that example, I mean, I do an entire training video on the difference between a website, a landing page, and a sales funnel.
You go.
That's the whole video. I don't sell anything in it. It does nothing except create content. that educates the audience, because an educated consumer is more likely to buy.
Yep.
And so the reason I brought up Marshall Silver, and I'm really enjoying this conversation, is he, for a long time, was the epitome of he doesn't get paid to speak. He gets
Correct.
paid
He
to
pays.
sell from stage, because
Yeah.
he almost always pays to talk on that stage.
Yeah.
But he makes that money back 5-fold, 10-fold, 20-fold, 30-fold on the back of the room with his little fill out purchase sheets from his sales presentation.
Well, I mean, let's touch on this really quick. A lot of people, it's the same way people are they're like, I just want a funnel because I don't want to sell anything. The same thing is true. I just want to be a keynote speaker. Just pay me $3,000 to show up. I'll talk on stage. It'll be amazing. Well, here's the thing. Most speakers that do keynotes are lucky if they get one booking a month. They're lucky. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of legwork. It takes knowing people. Now you can build it up to where you're doing, let's say that you do 2 at $3,000 a pop. So you're making $6,000 a month. I spoke at a live event 2 weeks ago that I paid for. I paid $2,000 to be there to speak on stage. I got 45 minutes. I did 23,000 from a room of 30 people.
Oh yeah.
Like
all day long.
Much different turnout, but you have to have something to sell and you have to be practiced. And I think there's a couple hurdles. Like people are like, I don't want to pay to be on stage. I'm scared because I don't know if what I have converts. Well, I'm just going to give you this. Here's what you do. There are tons of things going on in your town. Maybe not with COVID. There might not be a ton of lives, but there's still a ton of virtuals. You have associations galore that need people to speak. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on LinkedIn. Just tell them, hey, I'll come speak on X. 2 things out from what you sell. Look at who's in the room. Look at who asks you questions. Give them a way to contact you. You will still make sales. That's a free speaking gig that you're not going to pay for. You're probably not going to get paid for it either, but it's the start to getting things rolling because now you have your talk developed. You know what resonates with the audience. You know what doesn't. You can perfect it. It's the same way the first couple of clients you get should be free or low cost until you have your systems dialed in, right? I mean, I hate the fact that people are like, you should get paid for what you do. But when you're first starting, figure out if you know what you're doing by working with some people.
Well, and here's I'm glad you brought that up. Market research is paramount. And far too many people have this grandiose idea that, hey, I've got a sales funnel, so I'm just going to sell this thing. What if you're the only person that wants that thing? You haven't proven it. What are you doing?
Yep.
Now, in that thought process, one of the things that we've done, and now tell me your thoughts on this, because everybody has their own variances, but it's one thing that we help clients do as well. If they want to start doing webinars, virtual events, or even if they're going to start going to the stage route, we prove it with the digital asset.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever their product is they're selling,
yep.
coaching, consulting, digital course, event, whatever it is, we sell it through an omnipresent ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And if it converts, and we're typically looking for 1 or 2 KPIs, 100% ROI on initial offering, or 4 to 5 times ROAs is kind of the baseline. If it does either of those or both of them, it's proven and it can be sold from stage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it doesn't do that, this is something that I want everybody to listen to because it directly relates to paying to play. Okay. It's not a bad thing. Okay. Paying to play is the exact same thing as advertising or marketing. You want leads? What's the best way to get a lead? Generate your own with marketing dollars. You put the money out there, you can get a return back.
Yep.
Otherwise, you're dependent on somebody else, and maybe or maybe not, their audience is primed. Right? So if you have a free speaking gig, for instance, some of them will work out. Like I've done a breakout room or 2, but I've also completely bailed on a breakout room or 2. But those were because I knew the audience there. It wasn't just John called me on a Thursday and was like, hey, so I have an event tomorrow that I need a speaker for. You want to come? Well, maybe. I don't know. Who are you talking to? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I wouldn't use a free room as your main thing by any means, but
Okay.
it is a great testing ground. It will get you comfortable with speaking on stage. And if you get the same way you're comparing it to a sales funnel, if you go to do a free event and you have, let's say there's 10 people in the room and they all want to talk to you afterwards, you've got something. You'll feel comfortable paying for it from stage. If you put the pressure on yourself, I've seen one of my friends I think he paid 4 or 5K to be on a stage. He swore that he was going to sell out the room, blah, 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 blah. He didn't sell a single person because he had never spoke on stage before and he had an unproven product. I tried to talk him out of it and he was like, no, 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 this is going to work. This is going to work. So
Now, I'm a big fan of trial by fire. Okay. So how I got, and to be fair, I'm still not nearly as comfortable as I'd like to be. It's something that I'm still developing and working on.
Mhm.
More challenging now than ever because COVID shut most things down.
Yeah.
But it's still an evolution. Now, this is not for everybody. So those of you listening and watching, if you are not the same type of personality that I am, where you're either going to do it or it's going to be the biggest crash and burn that's ever happened, there's no in between. Like that level of commitment, if you don't have that level of commitment, I do not recommend the trial by fire era. However, for me, it works really well because the way that I got comfortable speaking in front of people was I just fucking did it. I was either going to fall flat on my face hard as hell or I was going to figure something out.
Yeah. I mean, I crashed and burned. I mean, my first event, 2 people bought. I had to refund everyone. I had to like beg the hotel not to hold me accountable to over $100,000 in expenses. Like I mean, it definitely, I knew I was comfortable speaking on stage at that point or in front of people because I had done it. Like, I mean, in a restaurant, you're in front of people all the time, right? But then the 80-person event that I sold out that followed that, it was dentists. It was 80 dentists. And I'm not a dentist. I didn't know what to talk about in front of them, but I figured it out. The trial by fire thing does work. It's not, I don't think there are some people who love it. 80-90% of the population should not be doing it because everyone says they want to do it. But if you say that, then go out and run 20 miles today. Prove to me that it's going to be painful. The same thing is going to happen.
Yeah, it sucks. It's just like, I'm glad you brought up the workout analogy, right? Like I used to be hitting it really hard for a while and then COVID came and quite frankly, I got lazy.
Yep.
And that turned into me getting a little on the fat side. And now I've been hitting the gym hard again, hired a trainer, started eating right, tracking macros, working out.
Yep.
And now it's like 7 days a week, cardio 7 days a week, lifting 5 days a week. But when I started getting back into it, it sucked.
Right.
It was not an easy process, but it is a good test and testament to kind of how that evolution occurs. Now, we're going to pivot for a second.
Sure.
We've talked a lot about the virtual events. We've talked about the speaking, the stage presence. Now, before we wrap up, because we've only got a few minutes left, we're going to open this up to a little bit of a philosophical conversation for the lack of a better term. What would you say or recommend as being that light switch moment in your life that took you from restaurant to this is what I want to do? Not just the Tony Robbins event, because that was the catalyst. We understand that. But what was that mental decision? How did the catalyst unlock something in you that you were like, you know what? This is who I am. Because one of the biggest struggles most people have, I went through it, a lot of our listeners and viewers went through it, is they don't know who they are and they don't know what their why is.
So, okay, I'll give you a couple different things because this is not like an easy answer, but people struggle with it. So I went to Tony Robbins, came back. I'm working in a corporate job. I made a little over 6 figures, but I knew that I was capped. I also knew that I wanted to do more. I owned a business in college, which it was commercial cleaning. I did well with, but I shut it down to travel. That's how I got into restaurants. And then, you know, here I was. I knew I wanted to do that. So I sat down, and that burned inside of me for like a year. And I started saving money and like started daydreaming about it. I wanted you guys to like understand, like think of any big decision that you've made. It might be buying a car, it might be buying a house, it might be getting married, some kind of bigger decision. You daydream and you think about it and you future pace your life to be there. When the first event crashed and burned, I was at a bar having a drink with a good friend of mine who owns a business. And they said, what are you going to do? Because I had offers on the table from headhunters to go work back in the restaurant industry at a 6-figure salary. Keep in mind, I have like less than $500 cash to my name and a credit card with $3,000 left on it. And I'm sitting there, and I had to have a real hard discussion with myself. And my friend said, what do you like? Do you believe in what you're doing? Is this really what you want to do? Or do you want to go back to it? And I said, you know, like, I'm going to keep going. And they said, cool, you can live in our utility room, like get your stuff together. And it was a small room. It was like an 8x8 room. So I had to make that decision. But the thing that allowed me to make that decision and to move forward is I held a vision every day in my head of this is where I am going. So obstacles are what we see when we take our eyes off the goal. Like, it is real easy to see and have hard times, right? I don't have enough money. I don't know how this is going to work. I'm frustrated filling out these online forms. Like, digital stuff sucks, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's all noise. It's all noise. Like that and positive. You have to decide what you want to focus on. So looking at, I want to do live events. I want to do live events. I want to do live events is the first thing, right? The second thing you ask, the number one challenge that I see with entrepreneurs, which I think you see as well, is, well, am I a coach? Do I help people with success? Am I a funnel builder? Like, they don't know what they are, and they change because they get shiny object syndrome, and they go from this to this to this. And I struggled with this, even doing live events. So the first 2 years I did live events, I sold people into consulting. Then I built a Facebook ads agency because that's what everybody wanted. I hate Facebook ads. I hate like sitting in front of a computer building ads. I hate managing people that build ads. I hated that whole business, but I did it for 2 years because that's what people said they wanted. I wasn't happy with it. My mind said that the whole time, but I was like, well, this is what people want, so I'm just going to do it. What I will tell you, like at the time I had coaches and they were like, do live events. You like doing live events, teach people live events, teach people to speak from stage. And I was like, I don't know if that's sexy. I don't know if people want it, blah, 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 blah. It does not, like, hear me. It does not matter what you pick as long as you stick to it. So like, pick something that you like, right? Whatever that is. If it's funnels, pick funnels. If it's speaking from stage, pick speaking from stage. If it is branding, pick that. Like, pick something that suits your skill set. If it's copywriting, I have a great copywriter friend that was so nervous when she started because she had all the imposter syndrome. But the minute she put her stake in the ground and said, this is who I am, this is what I do, like, deciding cuts off all other avenues. So this is what I do. This is how I'm moving forward. And you tell yourself that every day. The same way we were talking about Marshall Silver, I have my mission statement is right here in front of me. I read it probably 5 times a day. My mission is to build a multi-million-dollar business that helps people share and monetize their message from stages. Virtual, live, doesn't matter. That's my goal. And stay in your lane. If it doesn't fit in your lane, it does not get your attention. That will stop all the other stuff. How do you stop focusing on shiny objects? You stop looking at shiny objects. Plain and simple. Like, if you're married, you shouldn't be looking at other people, right? That's the innate thing. Yeah. I got married. This is what I'm doing. Same thing goes here. So like, whatever you're, well, I don't know what I want to do. Go get a job. Because if you have a job, then you'll daydream about leaving your job to go do something else. And maybe that will help you clarify it. But just pick something. Like I had coaches that told me that for years, and I was like, but I don't know. I just want to be a general consultant. I just want to do no. Pick something. Pick something. Pick something. Talk about it every day for 45 to 90 days.
Well, and I love that marker because it took me kind of a while to figure out what I wanted to do. And quite frankly, for everybody listening, that may change too. It's changed for me, right? I went from just being your funnel guy to now we specialize in intent, affinity, neuroscience, omnipresent ecosystems. That's not how we started.
Right.
But that's what I've always talked about. Even when I was just the funnel guy, the conversation was always, how can you identify your ideal client, capture their attention, convert their attention into an actual opportunity, communicate them when, where, and how they want to be communicated with to then retain them or help them in some kind of fashion.
Right.
That's omnipresence. I didn't know that 4 years ago.
Right.
But that's what that is. And so the talking about it thing, for anybody trying to figure out, well, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to speak about. I don't know what my stage presentation is going to be. What can you talk about? If the question that helped me is, if you could do anything in the world for free, would you still do it? If you weren't going to get paid for whatever it is you do, would you still do it? Well, if the answer is yes, that's probably what you should start getting paid to do.
Yeah. I mean, what do you like doing? And then, I mean, Steve Larson always says, publish, publish, publish. Russell always says, publish, publish, publish. If you start publishing, you force yourself to talk. Do a Facebook Live every day. I've done 2 90-day straight Facebook Live stints. It clarifies what you want in your head so quickly because you have to figure out what you want to talk about. And you won't let yourself talk about something you hate for more than a couple days. So it just and it does, you can morph a little bit, but it needs to be in your lane, right? Like you didn't go from funnels to something completely drastic, like health coaching. You weren't like, oh, I don't want to do funnels. I'm going to be a health coach. Like you stayed in your lane, and it's just honestly a deeper version of funnels. It's like, how do you make funnels better?
Well, and even the coaching that we've just started with the Inbound Secret and what Virtually Limitless, what we're doing and putting together with the Limitless Syndicate, it's still my lane. I haven't pivoted what I talk about or what I'm passionate about or what I can help with. It's just hyper focusing on that thing. Whatever that thing is. For me, it's sales, acquisitions, and the marketing technologies that begin that conversation. That's what I hyper focus on. That element of that business. Trey is operations. Lizzie's finance. Justine is the profit and finance coach. She's the queen of the institution by all means. But we have to hyper focus on those statements. Because you're right. We can't just go, all right, I'm a nutrition coach today. And never mind, I'm a business coach today.
That's not what anybody. Well, if you're sitting there and you're like, but I don't know. Here's the thing. People come to me for help with their presentation, help building a webinar. Those are the two things that we've worked on: live events, presentations, webinars. But once they're in my world, I help them with all of their stuff. I help them with copywriting. I help them with sales language. I help them with all of the stuff that I enjoy. But if I try to sell all that out front, they don't know what I do, so no one can buy from me. But when I say these are the 3 things that I do, my business is reaching millions. So we have live events, we have virtual events, we have presentations, we have webinars. Those are what we do. So if you want help with that, okay, I understand now. Like that's it. It just like it's the best I can say. I know you got more questions. We're on the philosophy rabbit hole, but what else you got?
I mean, we could have this conversation for a long time. So I think this is what we should do. And tell me if you're game. Let's do a part 2, because I know we've got to wrap up. So this is going to be part 1 of 2. We'll do a part 2 to continue the rabbit hole. But before we end part 1, are you game for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we end part 1, it's time for the 3 favors. Do you remember them from the beginning?
Vaguely.
You
Oh,
got
no.
you
Come
got
back. Oh, there you
super
are.
robotic. Are you back?
Mer. Yeah, are we good?
We're good right now. So,
Okay.
favor one, most impactful or most impressionable in a good way to you, either quote, experience, or story that can be summarized in a short amount of time.
Uh, Following up to what we just talked about, Jim Rohn, this is like the quote that my whole business is built on. Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar said, sales is nothing more than the transference of certainty, optimism, and excitement about what you do from yourself to your client. That's what we do that's what we teach people to do. That's why I love live events. That's why I love public speaking. It is why you need to plant a stake in the ground on whatever you do and just stand up and start talking about how much you do it. People will flock to you because they sense your enthusiasm and your certainty and your confidence in it, and you will move forward. That whole quote sums up my business.
Awesome. Now, second thing, this is usually an activity, an exercise, something. What's one thing that just helps you stay grounded? For some people, it's meditation. Some people, it's the gym. Some people, it's reading. Some people, it's taking time away from the business. What's one thing that you've experienced that helps you that may help listeners?
So I walk a lot. I know that probably sounds silly. I work out every day. I run 3 to 5 times a week, but every morning I do a morning routine. It's nothing hard. I journal. It's about a half an hour, and then I read for 30 minutes, and then I go for a walk. It's usually a 15 to 20-minute walk, but it gets me out. I usually listen to either an audiobook or some music, but it gets me out and like out of my office before I start work. It gives me time to I've already written down my to-do list for the day, but it gives me time to take a deep breath and come back centered, and then this is a whole mix of stuff. I sleep with my phone in the other room, and my phone is not in my office. It stops me from ever picking it up. Damon John is the first place I heard this. I know other people have talked about it, but you can't react to something if there's nothing to react to. So what's your phone? Your phone is a great tool. But what happens? You get inbound text, you're checking your email, you're on Facebook. People can get a hold of you. Nope, not in my world. And I don't look at my phone until noon every day. So by the time I've gotten up, done my workout, my morning routine, gone for a walk, I come back. I now have 2 hours of uninterrupted time to do work. And I sit down, and this comes from I think it's called Eat the Frog, but it's what's the biggest thing that's going to move the needle the most for my business that day? That's what gets tackled during that time. And that takes some mental discipline, because it's usually the thing you want to do least. But once you get in that habit of doing it, you just sit down, you're like, screw it, we're knocking this out. Let's go. Then at noon, I'll pick up my phone. I'll answer some emails and do that stuff. But that's having that morning locked in every morning has freed me up, and it moves your business forward very quickly because you're dealing with the most important tasks uninterrupted.
Yeah, I love it. And there's a lot of validity to just doing the hard thing. Because there's things every day, there's things that I don't want to have to do that I know I have to do. And it just seems to be a much more productive day when I'm just like, screw it. Let's just do it, get it over with, move on.
A lot of the times the pain is just in our head. We think about how bad it's going to suck to do whatever it is, right? But if we just sit down, shut up, and do it, it's nowhere near as bad as we imagine it being.
Yep, 100%. Now, last but not least, Steve, this is really your time to shine. Where can people contact you, friend you, follow you, learn more about you? And if there's something that you want to offer to the people, something that can make an impact in their lives, somewhere where they can join one of your events, where
Sure.
can they do so?
So I think the first thing that I would send you guys to, I have a free mini program called Death to Bad Webinars. It's a 3-part video series and 3 worksheets that will walk you through how to build a presentation from the ground up. It's quick, it's easy, it's not in depth. deathtobadwebinars.com. That would be where I'd send you. If you want to contact me, Steven, STEVEN .coffee, COFFEE, will get you on my scheduler for a 15-minute call. Steven.cash will take you to my website. Steve, STEVE .cash, CASH will take you to my website.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on, Steve. It was a pleasure to have you. We will have to book round 2. For all of you listeners and watchers out there, make sure to stay tuned for part 2 with Steve Werner. Once again, it was a pleasure to have you on, and this was the Inbound Secret.
This is the Inbound Secret. Secret.